Visit broadcast.lrn.fm to learn how. Broadcast.lrn.fm.
All right, y'all, welcome back to the show. It's Antiwar Radio. ChaosRadioAustin.org, LRN.FM, antiwar.com/radio, AnomalyRadio.com. I'm talking with Dilip Hiro. He's got a new piece at TomDispatch.com called America's Suffering a Power Outage. You talk about the stages of the collapse of the empire. That's not all at once like the Nazis. They went out in a ball of fire. But, we're falling much more on the model of the British Empire or maybe even the Romans before us in stages like this. But you reminded me of the important 20th century historian Carroll Quigley in his book Tragedy and Hope, A History of the World in Our Time. And it begins with kind of an overview of his view, and I think he had written another book about the rise and fall of civilizations. I forget exactly what it was called. But he goes through and he has his terms to define the different stages of a civilization. And he says that Western civilization has been really lucky in a way, where most civilizations are just tied to their local state's empire. The Western civilization for 2,000 years or more has been able to evolve from Greek to Roman to Christendom to Renaissance and Enlightenment and religious wars and post-religious wars and constitutionalism and law-based government and all these things as evolution. All the way through, we've been able, he says, in the West, to reinvent our civilization in a way that was able to keep going and yet still stay the West. And but he says that we're running out of options and ways to reinvent ourselves, and that with the collapse of the American empire, this is the last stage of a civilization, he says, is world empire, when the society, as you described, is collapsing from within and then lashes out at everyone else in the world and actually makes things much worse and brings themselves down. And then his concern, writing back in 1966, was that we were on the path to destruction. He was saying, if we don't abandon empire, if we don't learn from history and maintain our status as a republic, we will destroy the West forever, perhaps. Now, I wonder what you think of that.
No, I think, actually, I'm afraid, this is what I call the uni-thinking, like one center, one power, either it's Britain or it's Rome or it's America, but I'm afraid that's not where we're going. Let me just give you another model which has actually existed in history and which we have forgotten. Now, you have to go back to Europe and look at Europe in the days of Napoleon. Now, as you know, Napoleon was so strong, he conquered almost all of Europe, and then, of course, he overextended himself, went to Russia and got clobbered, and, of course, you know what happened then. Now, because of Napoleon becoming so strong and almost becoming the supreme lord of all of Europe, which is a very important part of the world, the remaining six powers, including the Ottoman Turkish Empire, they said, never again will we allow any one of us to become supreme lord as Napoleon was briefly or has he tried to be.
Right.
Now, that is what is called a multipolar world, as a multipolar Europe. And that particular model of multipolar Europe existed from roughly 1815 or 1718 up to 1918 World War I. And then it broke down, and then you know what happened. Now, that is the kind of a model which is already emerging, not on a European scale, on a world scale. I.e., now we find 3 or 4 major powers rising up. Of course, China is, in the stage of becoming a global power, but the Chinese have constantly said, we do not want to become G2. Like, they are the G20 or G8, that ourselves and America, we decide the fate of the world. No. We want a multipolar world in which power is, shall I say, fractured and power is distributed. Now, if you, of course, anybody, listeners, anybody else want to imagine, here is an image. If you keep in mind, and that image I actually mentioned in the preface of my book, After Empire, imagine a hall in which there are these, old aristocrats. They have their armor, they have their swords, and they are fighting each other one to one. And then if somebody wins, then he goes to the other one to fight on. Yes, they keep fighting each other. They have a rule. It's okay, you can fight one to one, but none of us will become the Supreme Lord. So that if we find that one of us is beating 3 or 4 others and is going to become the overlord, then we will all gather together and confront him, make sure that he doesn't become the Supreme Lord. That is a situation already existing. Already, if you can go back, if you look, even if America, you said about America's civilization and so on and so forth. See, if you take the, like a trade, international trade. As you know, there is a stalemate at the World Trade Organization about agricultural products of the developing and the developed world. They are called Doha talks. They have been going on since 2002. No resolution has been made because the 4 important countries like China, Russia, Brazil, and India, they are not prepared to bow to the authority of America and Europe. So I'm just saying here an example where 4 rising powers are able to block the major powers like European Union and USA. Okay, then you go back to, remember, only last December in Copenhagen, the climate conference, climate warming conference. There again you saw that America was not able to get its way, and again there was a stalemate. Now, most importantly, of course, that means non-security spheres of world politics, not world affairs, not politics, world affairs. Already there is this particular model of making sure that no one country, maybe USA or maybe China, becomes the supreme lord. That already exists. Now, in May of this year, exactly 17th of May of this year.
Okay, now, Dilip, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the music's playing. We got to go out to this break. Can I keep you for another segment, or maybe even 2 more?
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
If I can keep you 10 more minutes, if you got to go, I understand, but I sure would like to continue the conversation.
Sure, I think you can come back with the subject, the ongoing subject. Anytime you want me, I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you.